And joining us now to try and analyze all of this is John Grace, the founder of Investors Advantage, he tends to be a nonconformist when it comes to market strategies, by the way. John, thanks so much for joining us. To me, I'm not an expert, maybe like you are, but it seems absolutely insane that in the United States of America, we would be considering something like negative interest rates, which essentially says to Americans, don't save any money, don't do anything but consume, get debts, go in debt, and spend irresponsibly. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're 100%, Rick. And I mean, I'm saying batten down the hatches, because what has been called the best economy ever could well turn out to be the turbulent 20s, all right? No different than how we started the 1920s, right? The roaring 20s that ended in the Great Depression. So stay tuned. It's going to get interesting, but I don't think it's going to be pretty. I
want to show you something. Look at this graph, okay? This graph shows something that I think is really interesting. And I think this is what maybe at the root of the problem. That blue line, okay, that represents stocks, the investors, the less than 10% of America. The red line represents the other 90% of America, working stiffs like the rest of us, okay? As the economy has done well, look at how well the blue line does, and look at how not so well the red line does. That's wages for Americans. Tell us why that's important, John.
Well, I mean, it helps to put in perspective, Rick. From what I just saw yesterday, is it true that 22 billionaires have a higher net worth than the total wealth for all women in Africa? Africa, that's a not a country. That's a
continent.
Thank you. It's a continent. Thank you. It's a big one. It's a lot of people. Yeah. So it just helps us see how the 1%ers are doing fantastic. As you say, the rest of us not so well. And when we look at, as I had a conversation with the minimum wage rising by all of 4%, let's understand, if I'm not mistaken, the federal minimum wage is all of $7.25. If you run that out for 40 hours a week, 52 weeks in a year, I think that's about $15,000 a year. $15,000, a 4% increase on $15,000 is what? $600? That's not a week. It's not a month. That's $50 a month. So while it may sound good for the folks in those situations, it's no fun. The parade is not being enjoyed by all.
So what I'm concerned about, I don't want a recession. You don't want a recession. Certainly a global recession, but my biggest concern is that all the indicators do point to the fact that one is coming, and that we're not going to have the tools that are necessary to get us out of it because we've used them all up.
This is true, and as I say, I suggest to people, look, and recognize when people talk about depression, they're fearful. I'm saying don't be fearful, be factual, and be ready, all right? If you look at Great Depression 1, the economy took a nosedive, right? Stocks came down, New York real estate came down. Both took maybe 20 to 40 years to get back to even. So let's act as if this one's going to happen. The good news about Great Depression 1, Rick, is that on a per capita basis, more Americans became millionaires than any other time in history. So for those who have the cash, not the equity, right? Cash is king. What do they say about equity? Crickets. When you've got the cash, you can see prices come down, and you can take advantage of those lower prices, maybe even at the bottom, and catch the next wave, as opposed to what I think is going to turn out to be shock and awe for so many people because they weren't ready for this one at all.
Yeah, but what about the average guy who's just making a buck, barely getting by? If he were to lose his job, they say the average American has about $400 left over if they were to lose their job. That guy can't be thinking about how I'm going to make money if there's a recession. He's barely getting by, John.
Well, this is absolutely true. And if we go back, this is from Pew Research, Rick, and we look at 2009, what I see is that the average decline for Caucasians was 17%. The decline at that point in time for African Americans was 53%. And for Latino Americans, Rick, the decline was 66%. So let's just notice, 17%, you won't have any trouble getting back to even. 50, 60, 70% or close to that, you're not even back in the same arena you were just 10 years ago.
That's great stuff, John Grace, as usual. My thanks to you, sir, for sharing some of your knowledge and wisdom with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rick.
So you haven't heard that we're the ones covering the stories that you won't see covered anywhere else? In Venezuela, Kazakhstan. Let's go to Hong Kong. And the media reaction to that has been crickets. How about the way we cover those stories? What the hell does that mean? Huawei. That's the key word in this case, uprising. Keep? Can you believe that? Watching. This is the right thing for members of the media to do, to actually pick sides. Look, if you like what you see, subscribe.